Welcome to the High School Preview Show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Saranitas, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Tyler Amaral. Tyler, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Playoff season is here, John.
It's hard to believe. Yeah, we were talking about that. Of course, playoffs have been going on now for a couple of weeks in Vermont. They're picking up here in Massachusetts. The MIAA playoffs kick off this weekend. You got some playoff games on in Rhode Island. You got playoff games in New Hampshire and Maine as well. And in a couple of weeks, you'll have playoff games down in Connecticut. So it is crazy how, it's already week 9, and we're already at the point where we're talking playoffs, and we'll be at Gillette Stadium before you know it, covering the Super Bowls, and we'll be covering the Rhode Island state title games, the Connecticut state title games, and hopefully we can get up to New Hampshire and Maine as well. Before we get started here, I do want to remind you that Gold Athletics is your one-stop shop for fundraising. They have recently expanded into Maine and New Hampshire with Blaze and Jeff Whitman. They are ready to support even more programs across New England. Whether you're in football or any other sport, reach out to Gold Athletics and they'll make sure your program raises the money. Raise the money. As always, we're going to start with the MIAA. We're going to start here in Massachusetts. As we just said, the playoffs do kick off. They actually start tomorrow night when East Bridgewater visits Hudson. That'll be the only Thursday night playoff matchup this week. The rest of them are all pretty much on Friday night. Interesting brackets. Tyler and I are going to have a little bracket preview for you tomorrow morning to get you set for the start of the playoffs. But before we do that, we're going to actually preview each bracket tonight. And, of course, we're going to start in Division I. We're going to take a look at each matchup real quick, give you our thoughts, prediction, and then we'll do that by division. We will wrap up the show at the end like we always do, looking at some of the top matchups out of state as well. So, Tyler, let's start in Division I. Your first matchup is a 1-16 matchup. St. John's Prep hosts Attleboro. Look, I coach at King Philip. We played Attleboro last week. They're tough up front, man. They're pretty good up front. They give you problems along the line of scrimmage. And we had some issues with them early on. We made some adjustments, and we were able to get it going offensively. But they're a physical football team up front. All that being said, do they have a chance here against the Prep?
No, I don't think so. I am impressed with them, though. Like, the win over, Milford, I think that was pretty eye-opening to a lot of people. Now, Milford might not be what people thought they were going into the season, but that's still a really impressive win from this team. Attleboro honestly exceeded expectations in my eyes. They got to the playoffs. I didn't see that coming before the season. But St. John's Prep, I mean, you could say this about 99% of teams in the state. St. John's Prep just has too many horses. I think we kind of talked about this a little last week. That loss to Catholic Memorial, I think, was a real wake-up call for that team. Coach Shea Pierre is going to have his guys ready. Vargas to Barlow, we know about that connection. They were able to run the ball last week. They always play great defense. I really like St. John's Prep here. I don't think it's going to be too competitive.
No, I agree. I think Attleboro can match up physically up front, but I think that this game's going to be one in the perimeter, and ultimately they don't match up with this Prep team. I'm with you there. I like the Prep as well. Next up, we have the 8-9 matchup. On the left side of the bracket, Methuen hosting Franklin in an interesting matchup. Of course, these two teams played in the playoffs a couple years ago. Todd Kiley done a great job at Franklin. Methuen, of course, we know about Shane Eason and that vaunted offense. An intriguing matchup here. Many people think that if you get an upset in Division I in the opening round, this could be that game. We'll see. Your thoughts?
So Franklin's one of these teams that's just kind of gotten better throughout the year. Todd Kiley's done a great job, so I think we should have expected this. We should have seen this coming, that Franklin was going to get better throughout the year. I don't love the matchup, though. I think Shane Eason's arguably the top weapon in the MIAA. Like, he's an unreal athlete. You can give him the ball in any number of ways, and he's going to make things happen. So, I mean, he has at least a handful of games with 200 yards from scrimmage this year. I kind of see that continuing here. I like the Rangers.
Yeah, I think this is a tough matchup for Franklin. You got to go up to Methuen. You mentioned Easton. He might be the most dynamic player in the state. He's had a tremendous senior year, put up huge numbers. Methuen, to me, is a sleeper in D1. You know, when we think about Catholics versus Publics in Division I, we always try to find that one or two teams that could make a run and get to a sectional final. Methuen, Needham, those seem to be the two teams to keep an eye on in D1 this year. But I think ultimately Easton is the difference here. I agree with you. I think Franklin has had a special season. I think they've exceeded expectations, but I do think that Methuen is a little bit better. They are at home. I'm going with the Rangers here in that one as well. Next up, we have the 4-13 matchup. And by the way, we do have a Franklin Panthers fan checking in. Thea says, let's go Panthers. So there you go. Thea, which is the Greek word for goddess. And Thea, I believe, is the feta spread company. Great stuff, by the way. You should check it out. That's their logo. So in any event, next up, we have the Needham-Wachusett regional matchup. Of course, Needham's had a tremendous year. They're the number 4 seed. Wachusett turned it on late, ended up becoming the 13 seed. Intriguing matchup here. Wachusett has played a really good schedule, so they are battle-tested. This isn't going to be that big of a stage for them. But this Needham team, man, they are as good a Needham team as I can remember. And I've coached against Needham for years when I was an assistant at Norwood and an assistant at Walpole, and I was a head coach at Norwood. We've always had some battles against the Rockets. This is, like I said, as good a Needham program as I can remember.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the best teams they've had since that 2011 team that lost to BC High at Gillette.
Yeah, I coached against them. We lost to them in overtime when I was head coach at Norwood. We actually played them opening weekend on our new field at our new school. It was about 90 degrees. We cramped a little bit more than they did. That proved to be the difference in overtime. But we took them to OT, but they were good that year.
They were very good, yeah. And I think this team's probably better than that team. I think they're one of the top teams in the state. What else can you say? They play great defense. They have a great dynamic weapon in Aiden Williams. He's one of 2 FCS commits on the team. They have an FBS commit in Will McDonald as well. So, I mean, you have 3 Division I kids on this Needham team. It's pretty rare to see at a public school in Massachusetts have 3 D1 commits. They're a really impressive team. Wachusett's battle-tested, and they've kind of come on as of late here. They dominated Walpole last week. So I think they're playing well right now. Ultimately, though, I think Needham's just too big, too strong in the trenches. I think that's the difference. I like the Rockets.
Yeah, I like the Rockets as well. I think that is going to be the difference here. And you mentioned the number of Division I talent that they have on the roster. I mean, Coach Kopsko and that staff have done a great job coaching this team. And again, the talent's always been there. I think now you have that merger of the talent, the coaching. Coaching's always been there too. But I think everything has come together for them at the right time. And I think this is a Needham program that's ready to surprise some people in these playoffs. Next up, you have what could be the most intriguing, if not the most intriguing, certainly one of the 2 most intriguing first-round matchups here when Weymouth, the 12 seed, visits 5 seed Central Catholic. Central Catholic, nice bounce-back year in year 2 for Coach Sexton. What can you say about Mike Donovan and the job he's done at Weymouth? It's year 2 for him. Wildcats are back to being a perennial playoff team. This should be a pretty interesting matchup, but I think this is a game, Tyler, that can go either way.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Weymouth, I saw them play against Milton. They were an impressive team. As you mentioned, Coach Mike Donovan's done an outstanding job with this team. And listen, anytime you play a team like this that has a unique offense, they kind of run these single wing principles. You don't see that every day. In fact, Central Catholics probably hasn't seen that all year. So it's difficult to prepare for. I think Weymouth will be able to get the run game going in this game. Ultimately, though, I think similarly to Franklin, Central Catholic has gotten better throughout the year. And I think they're really playing well now. You talk about Caden Smith, Caden Chase, Jefferson Morales. They really have some different weapons here on offense that have emerged throughout the season. I think the Raiders are probably just a little too potent. I like Central in this one.
I like Central too, and I although I do think Weymouth's offense will present some problems, I like Central as well. Long bus ride for Weymouth. Central's played a pretty good schedule. They're playing pretty good football right now. I think it's going to be a close game. I give the slight edge to Central Catholic. All right, going to the other side of the bracket in D1. Next up, we have the 2-15 matchup. BC High and Andover. Intriguing matchup here. BC High still able to get a top 2 seed. They lost, of course, last week to St. John's Prep. Andover, up and down year, but they do play a pretty good schedule. Should be a pretty interesting matchup here in a game that could go either way.
Yeah, I think, if you're BC High, like you're probably hoping for a little bit easier of a matchup than Andover when you get the
Yeah, some of these 2-15 matchups are pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And so BC High, like they were undefeated up until last week. They were holding that 1 spot until last week, and then they kind of got beat up by St. John's Prep. I don't put a whole lot of stock into that game last week. Like I think that St. John's Prep team was really hungry after what happened to it the week before. So I think BC High is for real. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're in the semifinals here. They've kind of flown under the radar a little bit this year somehow. I think kind of people expected them to be in like the 8 or 9 seed range, but they got up to the 2 seed. Ultimately, I think they're probably a little too big, too physical. They're going to be able to run the ball against Andover. I like BC High here.
Yeah, I like BC High too, and I agree with you. I think that ultimately proves to be the difference of physicality of their offensive line. They can run the football. That passing game is also sneaky good. I think that proves to be the difference here. I like BC High over Andover as well. This 7-10 matchup is pretty interesting. Natick visiting Springfield Central. Of course, people will look at this bracket and do a double take that Springfield Central is a 7 seed. That's a byproduct, unfortunately, of a part of their schedule. But nonetheless, they're still amongst the favorites in Division I, certainly the top public school in Division I. Natick's had a really nice season, but the question here is, Tyler, can Natick match up here against the Springfield Central team?
So Natick's been very impressive. This is another team that I think, a program with such rich tradition and a perennial playoff contender, but we're, for whatever reason, kind of flying under the radar entering this year. I think it's kind of last year they were a little down by their standards. They lost to Framingham on Thanksgiving, but they've rebounded really nicely, and they're playing defense at a really high level. But they haven't played a team like Springfield Central that can put as much pressure on you, as Springfield Central can. You talk about Jared Stain, Josiah Cox, Isaiah Rogers, like Dwayne Early, Matthias Barber. Like, there's a bunch of kids on this team that are going D1 at various levels. They have so much skill, probably more skill than anyone in the state, really. So I think Natick's a very good team. I think this is just a brutal draw. And again, like we just talked about BC High having a brutal draw. Like, you're the 2 seed, you draw Andover, and then, like, congratulations, you get to play Springfield Central in the second round. Yeah, that's a brutal draw for them as well. So I think Springfield Central, like, they're, in my opinion, one of the top 2 teams in the division, top 2 or 3 team in the state. I think they just have too many weapons for Natick to handle. But Natick has been impressive, led by guys like Jack Showstead.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Springfield Central here as well. To your point about the amount of talent they have, the amount of Division I talent, they create matchups with that talent. They're tough to defend. They can play fast, but they can also line up and run the football and control the pace. Natick's had a really, really good season. I think ultimately, though, their playoff hopes come to an end here this week against Springfield Central. Again, look, it's you could say what you want about the divisions and who plays in what division, but I think at the end of the day, again, not to take anything away from what Natick has done this year, but this Springfield Central team has the potential to win it all in D1. Next up, we have a classic matchup in the 3-14 matchup, Xaverian and Brockton, 2 schools that are very familiar with each other. They meet again in the playoffs in what could be an intriguing matchup here. Brockton has gotten better as the year has gone on. Xaverian has had a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Obviously, they lost Vincent Busa a couple of weeks ago. They're going to be getting him back. But nonetheless, it's playoff time, which you did during the regular season. In essence, doesn't matter now. It's what you do moving forward. Xaverian is well equipped to make a run in D1.
Yeah, so I think Brockton, like, it's good to see them back in the playoffs under a first-year coach, and they've kind of battled back this year. Like, they had a pretty tough start to the year where they lost at Barnstable, the game against Barnstable, where they really had that game won and they let it slip away. Things could have unraveled from that point. So credit to the coaching staff for kind of keeping the kids focused here and getting them back to the playoffs. A player to watch on Brockton is Jared Mighty. He's been making plays out of the secondary all year. I think, Xaverian, they're too tough. They're just too tough. They've got a strong offensive line. You mentioned Busa's going to be back. Will Wood, a lot of weapons. They're tough on both lines, as we know. Funk and Amity on that defensive line. I think they're going to wreak havoc. I think Xaverian pulls away in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the X as well. I think Brockton has a chance to get back into contention in D1. It's not going to happen this year. I do think long-term Coach Silva, though, can get them back to a place where they can be competitive again. This is a big step towards that, however, but ultimately I agree with you, Xaverian. Too much size up front. They're too physical, but I think the difference is ultimately their skill is a little better, a little bit more seasoned, and that proves to be the difference. All right, next up, we're going to go to Division II. First matchup we're going to look at in the left-handed side of the bracket is number 1 Catholic Memorial against 16th ranked Quincy. Not much you can say about this one. Tough draw for Quincy.
I think we might have skipped Leominster Westford Academy there.
We did. We did. Good remembering. Good save. Good save. How do we forget about Leominster and Westford Academy, which, by the way, is a pretty intriguing matchup.
It is an intriguing matchup. It's a rematch from the regular season, which I love. I love these rematches that we get here in the postseason. Westford Academy is going to be able to score. Leominster, we know they can score. If you like offense, this is the game that you're going to want to check out. I think ultimately, though, Blue Devils, Osiris Lopez, just too many weapons there. Blue Devils win, but it should be a fun one.
Yeah, this should be a really good game. I agree with you. It's going to be a high-scoring affair. This Leominster team is a little sneaky in D1. If they come to play and you don't, and you turn the ball over, this is a team that could beat you in advance. So I think this has the potential to be a high-scoring game. I think it has the potential to be a game that could be one of the higher-scoring games of the weekend. Ultimately, I'm with you. I agree. I think Osiris Lopez and that Blue Devil offense might be a little too much for the Grey Ghosts. Now we can go to Division II and start with Catholic Memorial and Quincy.
Yeah, I mean, it's CM. They're just too potent. I think they're the best team in the state. No disrespect to Quincy. Nice season getting to this point. CM just has too many weapons, led by Mackay Dodd.
Yep. Yeah, there's not much to say. Again, it's not a knock on Quincy. Tough draw for them, but CM is the best team in the state. They've played like it all year. They're going to be a tough out in these playoffs no matter who plays them. Ultimately, they're the best team in the bracket. They advance. Next up, we have number 8 seeded Bridgewater Raynham, who's won 5 in a row, hosting number 9 seeded Algonquin.
I think this will be a pretty fun matchup. I really like what Ian Bain's done here in year one. This is another team. We talk about Franklin, Central Catholic. BR is another one of these teams that's gotten better throughout the year. They're really playing good football right now. They're one of the hottest teams in Division II. I don't expect them to go on a run here, given that CM would be next in their way. But I think they handle Algonquin here. I like BR.
I like BR too. I think it took Ian Bain a while to get cooking there with the Trojans, but like I said, they've won 5 in a row. They've embraced the system. It's a good offensive system. They're a program that once he gets it going down there, they're going to be a title contender in Division II. They're going to be a factor. You're right that if they do win in advance, obviously they play CM. But again, this is year one for Ian Bain. Just making the playoffs is progress. You win a playoff game, that's progress. Even if you don't get past CM, if you finish strong with a Thanksgiving win, it's a great foundation to build a program. So at the end of the day, I think BR is a little bit better than Algonquin. They will take care of business there in advance. Next up, we have the 4-13 matchup. Bishop Fien hosting North Andover.
Yeah, I think earlier in the year, I would have projected this game to be a little bit closer. North Andover kind of struggled here down the stretch. Bishop Fien is playing some really good football. They have strong line play. They play really good defense. They just shut out a good St. Mary's team. Mortis and Quinn in the backfield. Shamrock's going to be too tough on this one. I like Fien.
Yeah, North Andover got off to a good start, but they've really tailed off. They certainly have the talent, though, to go on the road and possibly pull off the upset here. But I think it's asking a lot for them to go into McGrath and beat Bishop Fien. You mentioned Mortis. You mentioned Quinn. That offense can make big plays, but they can also slow things down and grind it out. And their defense has been exceptional all year. I think they'll be able to slow down a good North Andover running game. But I think ultimately Fien is the better team here. I'm going with Fien as well. Next up, we have the 5-12 matchup. Wellesley hosting Plymouth North.
I think Wellesley is sort of an underrated team here in Division II. I think they're kind of a forgotten team. Like, naturally, everyone's kind of drawn to CM, KP, Marchfield, then sort of like Fien. Even like Barnstable, I feel like gets more love than Wellesley. I think this Wellesley team is very good, though. They played a challenging schedule. They're going to be prepared for this. I like the Raiders. I think they win by a few scores.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wellesley as well, and I agree with you. They have been underrated all year. To your point, they played a good schedule in the Bay State League, played a good non-conference schedule, almost beat Milford earlier this year, ended up losing 7-6. But this is a good football team, and Jesse Davis and his staff do a great job there. This is a team that has a potential to possibly get to round 3. You know, when you look at this Wellesley team, I think that if they come to play, they're skilled enough that they can put up points and take care of business in round 1, and I think they will ultimately. I like them over Plymouth North as well. Let's go to the other side of the bracket. We got the 2:15 matchup, King Philip, Arlington.
Yeah, I mean, Arlington they're kind of a team that's been up and down this year. They have some good line play. Brady Beckenhouse is a BC commit. They got beat up by Stoneham, but they've kind of righted the ship here. They've been playing better. They've been playing some pretty good football. KP's kind of the standard, though, or one of the standards programs here in Division II and throughout the state. Good line play on both sides, good defense, always able to run the football. That's a recipe for success. I like KP by multiple scores here.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be coaching in this game Friday night, so I'm going to abstain from a pick. Next up, we have the 7-10 matchup, Barnstable and North Quincy. Interesting matchup here. You know, Barnstable's played a really good schedule. They've had a good season. North Quincy, though, is really good. You got Mikey Galligan at quarterback, Ryan Craig, North Quincy legend. He's done a great job with that program, getting it to a place where they're in playoff contention year in and year out. This is an interesting matchup. I almost find this game to be a toss-up.
I think it is going to be a lot closer than people are realizing or expecting. North Quincy, you mentioned Galligan at quarterback. He's a very good player. In these teams that have been able to get the ball in space and have some athletes on the perimeter with good quarterback play, they've given Barnstable trouble. I mean, listen, you saw this team lose by a few scores to Dartmouth a couple weeks ago. Hendricken is a team that rattled off 21 straight against them. They lost to LaSalle. So these sort of teams can put a lot of pressure on this Barnstable team. I think Barnstable probably wins, but I think it's going to be one of the better games in Division II.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with Barnstable too. I think home field will matter here, but this is an old school matchup. These two teams used to, of course, play each other on a year-to-year basis when they were in the same league together. So there's familiarity there, but I think Barnstable has a slight edge just because they're at home. 3:14 matchup features Marshfield and Concord Carlisle.
What do you say whenever we talk about Marshfield? What's your go-to?
It's your favorite skill group. You'll have to talk about Tor Moss and Charlie Carroll and Davin True.
I love to talk about the skill group. I love to talk about the pace that Chris Aruka, his offense plays with. Marshfield, it just wears down on teams. I think Concord Carlisle they're a pretty good team. They've had some ups and downs this year. I think Marshfield, though, it's really tough to contain that offense. I think Marshfield this year, they played better defense than they have maybe in the past. The Rams are going to be a tough out in D2. I like them here.
Yeah, I agree. I like them too. I think ultimately you talk about that offense. They're explosive. They can make plays. They can control the pace. I think that proves to be the difference. All right, final matchup is the 6-11 matchup, Winchester and Peabody.
So I think Winchester and Wellesley are very similar. I think those are the two forgotten teams here in D2 who could make a surprise run at the semifinals. I think Winchester's playing really good football. They had that arguably game of the year, that 1-point loss to Reading a couple weeks back. Winchester's a very tough team. They're battle tested. I think they win this one over Peabody.
Yeah, Peabody got off to a good start, slowed down there down the stretch. I think this Winchester team is underrated, though. They've had a couple good come-from-behind wins. They've been underrated the last couple years. I mean, they were a good team last year, playoff team, got to the second round, eventually losing to KP. This is a team that I think a lot of people are going to take for granted in D2, but don't. I mean, this is a program that has history, tradition. They're more than capable of not only winning this week, but maybe putting a scare into one of the other programs. You are watching the high school preview show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Saranitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Tyler Amaral. We do want to remind you that Gold Athletics is your one-stop shop for fundraising. They've recently expanded into Maine and New Hampshire with Blaze and Jeff Whitman. They are ready to support even more programs across New England. Whether you're in football or any other sport, reach out to Gold Athletics, and they'll make sure your program raises the money. All right, next up, we're going to go to Division III, where Reading is the number 1 seed. They host the 16 seed Lynn English.
Reading, I think they're going to win this game. I think they're probably the favorite in Division III. Somehow they're sort of still flying under the radar. They just continue to handle business, continue to win new games. I like Reading in this one. Murphy, Bursey, that's a tough backfield. They've played good defense. They've been able to score when they had to. I just mentioned that win over Winchester. They're battle-tested. I like the Rockets.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Rockets here as well. It kind of flown under the radar this year. Not enough people are talking about them, but they should be the favorite in what is a wide open Division III. Next up, we have the 8-9 matchup, Masco-Milford.
This is probably the hardest game to pick, in my opinion. This is like a classic 8-9 toss-up. Milford's been up and down. Like you mentioned, that like a good win against Wellesley, even in a loss last week against a good Franklin team. They lost in overtime, but they've been beat up in some other games. Lost close to Leominster as well. So they've been kind of up and down this year. Throughout the year, Masco started hot with that win over Billerica. They've been playing pretty good football. I think I lean Masco here, and like Masco's a team that's probably a year ahead of schedule. They have a lot of good juniors on that team.
Yeah, I'm going to go Milford here. I think that last week was a precursor of what's to come. They put it together, tough OT loss to Franklin. But I think they go on the road and they get it done. And if they do get it done, then they have to play Reading in round 2. All right, the 4-13 matchup features North Attleboro hosting Woburn, the Woburn Tanners.
I feel like I've become like something of a North Attleboro beat guy this year. Like I've seen them play 3 times already. They're
Tyler Emerald, Red Rocketeer beat writer.
Yeah, put it in my bio. They're a good team. They're a good team. They're very good defensively. I think that backfield tandem, it's mostly Bannon, but then they mix it in with Paradise as well. And then Chase Rosoli can beat you with his arm and his legs. They do struggle to score at some points, but they have weapons and they're very good defensively. They're well coached. I think they're going to make a run in Division III, and I definitely like them here over the Tanners.
I like them too, but to your point, they got to get the offense going because there is talent there. Bannon's the Georgetown commit. You got Paradise. You got Frasoli at quarterback. There's talent there. They need to get it going offensively if they're going to make a run. Next up, we have the 5-12 matchup, which features a Central versus Western Mass matchup. West Springfield, I should say, hosting Westboro.
There should be a fun one. Like Westboro 7-1, only losses to a good Burlington team. And then Westside, I think, is kind of a forgotten team across the state. Now, listen, they didn't play the greatest schedule. The only playoff team they played was Waucona, who's a D7 team, and they're a D3 team. But the numbers are the numbers, and they continue to score points, and they continue to blow out opponents. I think they are going to be competitive in Division III. Stone to Gingerua, one of the better tandems in the state. I think they win at least this week, and don't be surprised if this is a semifinal team.
Yeah, I like them here as well, and I think they're going to surprise some people in Central and Eastern Mass. This is a good football team. Next up, we have the 2-15 matchup, Billerica Silver Lake.
I lean Billerica here. Like Billerica's been like the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde team this year. Like you really don't know what to predict, what to expect from a week-to-week basis from this team. They close on a high note with a win over North Andover, and then a pretty resounding win over Andover. They've kind of probably become one of the favorites here in D3 in a wide open bracket. I saw Silver Lake earlier in the year. Wes Griffin's a really good running back. Ultimately, though, I think Billerica is just too tough.
Yeah, it's hard to pick against Billerica here. I think this is their opportunity to right the ship, get it going. We know how talented they are. We know how good Gentili is at quarterback. I think ultimately what it comes down to is they're starting to get into a groove here. And if they do, we know with Dwayne Sigsbury, he's been there before, lots of experience. His teams can make runs. Next up, 7-10 matchup, Hingham Walpole.
I'm going with the slight upset here. I've seen Walpole play in person. They played a brutal schedule. I think that kind of strength of schedule is going to make the difference in a game like this. I think Noah McKenzie probably makes a play late. Should be a back and forth affair. Pretty much a toss-up here, but I like Walpole.
I like Walpole, too. I'm going to go with them here as well. Next up, we have the 3-14 matchup, Mansfield hosting Doherty. Of course, these two teams played during the regular season last year.
Yeah, I think Mansfield is again one of these teams. Like they're in that group with North, Reading, and Billerica as I think kind of the 4 favorites here in Division III. I saw this team play. They do have some nice junior pieces. Quarterback Tommy Villette being the key guy there from that junior class. And it's a Mike Redding coach program. I don't know how you bet against them, especially this early on. I like Mansfield.
Yeah, I like Mansfield as well. I think that they take care of business relatively easily, and if they win, they get the winner of Dartmouth-Milton, the 6-11 matchup.
Yeah, another real toss up here in Division Three. I've seen Milton play a couple times. They've struggled to get the running game going in both of those games. But Patrick Collins, he's a real dual threat runner. He can run when he has to. He can make all the throws. Coach Dembowski, we know what he's going to bring to the table here. We know this program's battle tested. Dartmouth's been sort of up and down this year. Like they followed up a nice win over Barnstable with a 18-point loss to BR. So that's kind of how their season's gone. I think this is another like true toss-up, but I'm going with the road upset again here. I like Milton.
Yeah, it's that time of year. I think Milton is going to get it going. Now, Dartmouth's going to be tough. You get Jackson Hart at quarterback. Of course, Gramlich is another good player for them. But I think ultimately this Milton team, that they usually get into a groove here come playoff time, and they tend to play their best football this season. We saw that last year. I kind of see this being the case again this year. Now, do I think they defend their crown and get back to Gillette? To be determined. I mean, Mansfield would be a tough second-round draw. But nonetheless, Steve Dombrowski, one of the best coaches in the state, he'll find a way to get him going. I like Milton in what should be a really good game. It'll be a close game, but I think that Milton goes on the road and takes care of business. All right, next up, we are going to go on to Division 4, and we're going to have to go a little rapid fire here, my friend. 116 matchup, Duxbury Dragons hosting the Holliston Panthers.
I saw Holliston play last week. I thought they were tough on defense. Duxbury's Duxbury, though. Give me the Dragons.
Yeah, I agree. I think Holliston defensively could keep this close for a half, but I think ultimately they lack the firepower to keep up with Duxbury. Duxbury's Duxbury. To your point, a lot of people haven't talked about them this year, but Trevor Jones and company, that's a good football team. Again, this is their time of year. This is when they tend to play their best football. I think this season will be no exception. 8-9 matchup features Canton hosting Tantasqua Regional.
I like the Bulldogs here. They're too battle tested. Tantasqua's kind of got beaten up by some of the playoff teams' better opponents on their schedule this year. Canton's played a brutal schedule. I like Canton.
Yeah, Canton's played a tough schedule. They came back to earth a little bit down the stretch with losses to Foxborough and Mansfield, but Anthony Fallon's done a great job there. They're a program that's battle tested, as you said. I think they beat Tantasqua and advance to face Duxbury. The 4-13 matchup features a team that I think a lot of people think is a sleeper in D4 in Malden Catholic, hosting Somerset Berkeley.
Yeah, I like Malden Catholic here. It's been a nice year for the program. They're 4-4, but don't let that record fool you. Those games down the stretch, those losses came to Xaverian, Catholic Memorial, BC High, St. John's Prep. Like no other team in Division 4 has played a schedule like that.
No, I agree, and I think that that's ultimately the difference. I mean, look at who they've lost to. Coach Gaff's done a tremendous job there. Malden Catholic is a team to keep an eye on in D4. They can find themselves in the sectional final. 5-12 matchup features Tewksbury hosting Westwood.
Listen, I think Tewksbury is one of the top teams in this division. I think they're a sleeper. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they are one of the final two teams standing at Gillette Stadium. Coach Elward, one of the best in the state. They've got a lot of weapons on offense, led by Emeka Olu. I like the Redmen.
Yeah, I do too. I'm going to go with Tewksbury here. Hard to bet against them this time of year. Coach Aylward has done it for a long time, and he squeezes a lot of juice out of that lemon at Tewksbury. He gets a lot out of his talent. All right, next up, we're going to look at the 2-15 matchup. Scituate hosting Melrose. Sailors have been awfully impressive this season.
Scituate may be the 2 seed, but I think they're the favorite in Division 4. I've seen them a couple times this year, including a 52-0 win over Hanover. It's a very potent offense. We know what Herb Devine can do in the postseason. First-year starter Johnny Donovan at quarterback. He's getting better as the season progresses. I like the Sailors here.
All right, next up we have the 7. I like the Sailors as well. Next up we have the 7-10 matchup with Burlington hosting Wayland.
Again, I think this is another one of these toss-ups, these 8-9 games, 7-10 games across all 8 divisions, real toss-up type games. I struggled with this one. Ultimately, I kind of am leaning towards the Red Devils here. I think Burlington gets it done in a close one.
Yeah, me too. I think that this Burlington team is supremely underrated, although it's hard to bet against a Scott Parsegian coach team. We know what Dresden's and that offense can do. This is going to be a pretty good game. I could see this being a game that is a toss-up, goes either way. Next up, we have the 3-14 matchup. Perhaps the one team in this division that I think a lot of people aren't talking enough about, Grafton hosting Bedford, who quietly had a pretty good year.
Bedford did have a good year in their battle test. They played a tough non-league schedule. Grafton, though, they're arguably the best defensive team in the entire state. They play great defense. Coach Chris McMahon really has that team, consistently in the mix here in Division 4. This year is no exception. Again, another team that I wouldn't be at all surprised if they make it to Gillette. I like the Gators big.
Yeah, and next up we have the 6-11 matchup. I like the Gators too. Next up we have the 6-11 matchup, Marblehead hosting Norwood.
Marblehead's a funny team. Like early in the year, they got beat up by KP, beat up by Fenwick, and I was like, what's going on here with this team? Since then, they've rattled off 6 wins in a row, playing some of the best defense in the state. Coach Rudloff, we know he's going to have this team ready. I like the Magicians.
Yeah, I like the Magicians too. I think this is a tough draw for Norwood. Of course, these two teams played in the playoffs a couple of years ago, with Marblehead prevailing in that one. I think this will be a similar outcome here as well. I just think ultimately defense is too good. They're playing really good football going into the playoffs, and having coached against them this year, I mean, their offense can be potent. They're well coached offensively. I think this is a tough matchup for that Norwood defense. All right, we'll move along here to D5. We're going to start with the 116 matchup. Shawsheen slinging Sid Tildesley and the Rams hosting Gloucester, the Fishermen. Is this going to be a Fisherman revival?
Not quite. Not quite. They've had a nice year. They've got to the playoffs. Shawsheen beefed up that non-league schedule heading into this year. They knew what this team was capable of, and we're kind of seeing that right now. We've seen it play out throughout the season. They haven't played a competitive game this year. They're undefeated for a reason. Sling and Sid and the boys keep it rolling.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to be a tough matchup here. Very underrated. I think coming into the season, obviously, defending champion Foxborough was the favorite going in. But I think when you look at what Shawsheen had back, probably should have given them a little bit more credit. I think a lot of people kind of took them, I don't want to say for granted or took them lightly, but they're better than I think some people thought. 8-9 matchup features Newburyport and Bishop Stang.
This is a tough one. Both teams have kind of taken their lumps throughout the year, but they've also had some high notes. Ultimately, though, I think that road trip's going to prove to be a little too tough for Stang. I like Newburyport.
All right, I agree. I'm with you there as well. I'm going to go with Newburyport in that one as well. Next up, we have the 4-13 matchup. 4 seed here is an interesting team to keep an eye on in D5. Old Rochester hosting Medway.
Yeah, I think Old Rochester is kind of an underrated team. They're really able to run the ball every year. They're playing good defense. They dominated their South Coast Conference schedule. I think they handle business here against Medway by a few scores. Yeah,
Coach Rigney's done a great job at Medway turning that program around. They had a tough year. They had a few tough years actually there, but he and his staff have done a great job turning that program around. Talking about Old Rochester, old school physical. They're going to run the eye. They're going to pound the ball, sprinkle in a little option. They're tough to defend. They're a sleeper in D5. Keep an eye on them. I like them in this one as well. All right, 5-12 matchup features another team that I think people are taking slightly for granted here, but a team that could find themselves at Gillette and Bishop Fenwick, the 5 seed hosting 12 seed Norton.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think if seeding and if the higher seed prevails here and we get Fenwick versus Old Rochester in the next round, that's going to be one of the better quarterfinal matchups regardless of division. Fian's a tough team, only losses to Fian, of course, who's a Division II contender. So Fenwick's going to be a tough out here. I think they're too tough for Norton in this one. Crusaders advance.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think Fenwick, like I said earlier, I think this is a team that a lot of people aren't talking enough about in 5, but they should. And they're going to have a chip on their shoulder after last year as well. They feel that they got robbed of an opportunity to possibly get to Gillette last year, which they did. So there's also a little bit of a redemption thing there with them. All right, on the other side of the bracket in D5, we have the 2-15 matchup, Hanover and Northeast Metro Regional Voc Tech.
A mouthful there. I've got Hanover. The Hawks, they had a close loss to Duxbury earlier in the year. I saw them and they lost by 52 to Scituate. That's not indicative of what this team is. They're not really 52 points worse than Scituate. They're a good team, a good program. Again, this is a team that I would not at all be surprised if they make a return trip to Gillette. They handle business on Friday night.
Yeah, I think that they handle business as well. Next up, the 7-10 matchup, Auburn and BVT.
So Shawsheen is trying to join BVT as the only tech schools to win a Super Bowl under the statewide format, which came into effect in 2013. BVT is a team that's made it twice. They're proud. You have a very rich football tradition, especially in recent history. This is a real toss-up. Auburn's pretty battle-tested out of a team from Central Mass. This is a really good Central Mass matchup. I think I lean the Rockets, but this is a real toss-up to me.
Yeah, I'm going to go with BVT here. I'm with you. I think Auburn is battle-tested, but I think BVT is a good football team. There's some talent there. They're back in the playoffs. I'm going to go with I haven't picked many upsets. I haven't picked many road teams. This is an opportunity for me to do it. I'm going to go BVT. Next up, we have the defending D5 champs, Foxborough. They're the 3 seed. They host 14 seed Danvers.
Yeah, so I mentioned I think Situate's probably the favorite in Division 4. I saw Foxborough lose to them on a Hail Mary week 1 without Ben Angelini. Ben Angelini he missed week 1, he missed week 2, kind of ramped it up a little bit in that KP game. He's back to full strength now. He's one of the better backs in the state. We know they play great defense. Foxborough's going to win this one.
Yeah, Danvers' double wing could probably keep them in this game, but I don't see them stopping Angelini in that offense. Foxborough has woken up, won 5 in a row. I think the good times continue there. They'll make it 6 in a row with a win over Danvers. All right, finally, we have the 6-11 matchup. Greater Lowell Tech hosting Dedham.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Another one of these tech schools here in Division 5. Dedham's been kind of banged up throughout the year. They've been up and down throughout the year. I think they find a way to get this one done. I think it's going to be a close one, but I lean Dedham.
Yeah, they have been banged up. Played a relatively tough schedule in the Tri-Valley. Haven't had A.J. Panett for part of the season as well. They're talented running back, but I think Dedham finds a way to get it done as well. I think Coach Cloutier brings his team up there, and they win in advance. And if they do, they will face Foxborough more than likely. So, all right. Next up, we're going to go to D6 here. And again, we are moving along here in our MIAA preview. First matchup we got is tomorrow night. Hudson hosting East Bridgewater.
Yeah, Hudson's got this one. That they haven't been touched so far this year. I don't think East Bridgewater's really going to be able to compete with them. Maybe for a little bit early on. Hudson's just too potent, led by quarterback Jake Attaway. Hawks win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Hudson as well. I mean, they have been explosive all year. They're the real deal. They've been building up to this point. Tough to stop Attaway in that offense. I like Hudson. 8-9 matchup is Sandwich versus St. Mary's.
I'll be there on Friday night. I'm really looking forward to this one. This should be a fun game. Again, an 8-9 matchup, another true toss-up. St. Mary's is very good. Their only loss is to Bishop Fee, and again, a Division II opponent. They play very good defense. They arguably have the best defense in Division 6. I like the Spartans. Yeah,
I'm going to go with St. Mary's as well. Like you mentioned, tough loss last week to Fee, but this is a good football team that's been pretty good all year. They were undefeated going into that game. Sandwich has also had a good year, but I'm going to go with the Spartans as well. All right, the 4-13 matchup features Norwell and North Reading. North Reading, of course, a team that's battle-tested. They've been to Gillette a couple of times. Pretty interesting matchup here.
Yeah, I think Norwell's a little too good here. You talk about a kid like Ballstrom. They've kind of got the quarterback position under control. They had some health issues going on early in the season. I think they were down to their third-string quarterback at one point. Got beat up by a very good Scituate team. They've really bounced back here. They're playing good football. I like Norwell.
I'm going to go with Norwell as well. Next up, we have the 5-12 matchup. Abington hosting Winthrop.
This is another fun game here. Winthrop, they're always battle-tested. They always seem to be playing in November. Abington, first-year coach Ed Riley taking over for the legendary Coach Kelleher. He's done a nice job there. They have a stable of backs they can use. I think that depth is gonna benefit them in this one. I like the Green Wave.
Yeah, I like the Green Wave too, although I think that, to your point about Winthrop, they are battle-tested. They're a program that has been there before, but ultimately I think that Abington is a little better. All right, next up, we're going to go to the other side of the bracket. We got the 2-15 matchup. Stoneham hosting Oakmont Regional.
Yes, I mean, Stoneham's been dominant all the way through the year until last week. They lost 31-28 to Wakefield, I believe the score was. It was a close game, but kind of an unexpected result. Wakefield's a team that's not in the playoffs, so I didn't really see that coming. That Stoneham offense, though, Coach Almeida, we know double wing, Trent, Kilty, it's going to be tough to stop. Oakmont's a team that has played a pretty tough schedule out of Central Mass, but I think Stoneham is probably a top 3 or 4 team in the division. I like Stoneham here.
I'm going to go with Stoneham as well. I know last week was a tough loss for them, but it's also a blip on the radar. Give me Sparty in that one. The 7-10 matchup features Swampscott, who's back in the playoffs, taking on Bay Path Regional Voc Tech.
I think it's going to be a really fun matchup. Bay Path's a team that's flying into the radar. Caden Brochu is one of the more underrated players in the state.
I was going to say, I don't think people realize how good Bay Path is.
I don't either, and they're undefeated, and they're really taking care of business here. They beat a very good Clinton team earlier in the year, one of the D7 favorites. So I think this is sort of a toss-up here, really. But I'm going to lean Swampscott. I think Swampscott, ultimately, they play the tougher schedule. When we come across these toss-up games, I tend to lean towards the team that's more battle tested, challenge themselves in the regular season. I like Swampscott, but it should be close.
Yeah, and the question is, can Bay Path match up athletically? That's going to be the difference. We know Swampscott can throw the ball. I'm going to go Bay Path here. I think this is one of my upset specials. It seems this is my sweet spot, that 7-10 matchup. I'm going to go Bay Path. I think Brochu and company get it done in advance to take on Stoneham, and would be a physical, low-scoring, potentially lower-scoring affair. Next up, we have the 3-14 matchup. Fairhaven, the defending D6 champs, hosting Maynard.
How many times will Justin Marks carry the ball in this game? I'm going to say 33. I think 33 carries is going to be the magic number. I think he gets it done, finds the end zone a couple times, Blue Devils win.
Yeah, I'm going with Fairhaven here as well. I think they're a little bit of the forgotten team with how good Hudson has been. And finally, the 6-11 matchup, Linfield and DY.
I think this is the best matchup on the board here in this division, in Division 6, and arguably one of the top ones in the state. Tyler Adamo versus Jaden Barber. Very good quarterback matchup, regardless of division. The Dolphins, I think, they're not your not your average, not your classic 11 seed. They're better than that, I think. I lean Linfield, though. I think this is going to be a back-and-forth affair. I think there will be a lot of points scored, but give me the Pioneers.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I think that this is going to be a back-and-forth game. Adamo's had a really good year. I don't think enough people are talking about him in terms of the year he's had statistically, but I'm with you here as well. I like Linfield as well. All right, we're going to go to Division 7 here, and we've got Uxbridge hosting the 16 seed St. Paul. St. Paul. They're hosting St. Paul. I couldn't see what it said there.
They are hosting St. Paul. St. Paul is a team. They were like the 19th ranked team in D7, but like Nantucket and Rockland and I think one other team didn't have enough wins, so they're in here. It's a good story. They're back in the playoffs here, but Uxbridge, I think, like entering the year, at least I didn't see them as like the clear favorite as they were last year in Division 7. But they've certainly emerged as that clear-cut team. Like, I'd be surprised if they don't win Division 7. I think Uxbridge wins this one going away. They've been a dominant team again this year.
Yeah, they'll win this one. And, of course, if they do, they'll advance to face the winner of the 8-9 matchup, Gardner and Manchester Essex.
Another 8-9 matchup that's a real toss-up here. I think Manchester Essex is probably a little bit more skilled, a little bit more talented. I like the Hornets here, but this one could go either way.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to go with Manchester Essex as well in that one. Next up is the 4-13 matchup. Northbridge, Coach LaChapelle, I believe if he wins this one, it'll be 400.
That is correct, 400.
Yep. And they host 13th seed Oxford. This should be a pretty good Central Mass matchup.
Yeah, I would just like everyone to take a second to think about 400 wins in football. Like it's not basketball. Like think about 400 wins in football is just absurd.
You have to be around a long time.
Yeah, I think it's his 42nd year.
Which he has been, right.
Even if you do the math on that, it's like over 8 wins a year. It's 8 or 9 wins every single year for 42 years. It's just ridiculous. He's one of the best coaches in state history. This Rams team is really good. I think they can make a run in Division 7. They get Coach LaChapelle his 400th win this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think Northbridge wins here as well. Next up, we have the 5-12 matchup. Millbury hosting Wacona.
I
My
knew that.
Wacona.
I've been waiting on that one all year. I think so. Wacona, Coach Campbell does a great job with that program. They're always in the mix. They're always in the playoffs. They're down by their standards. Millbury has a good team this year, a lot of skill. I like the Woolies.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Millbury as well. I mean, Wacona being there, it's a program appearance. Coach Campbell usually has more talented teams, but I like Millbury as well. All right, on the other side of the bracket, the 215 matchup, Clinton hosting Tingsboro.
Yeah, Gales, we've been talking about them all year. We've been talking about them since August. They're a team that started off 1-2. They played a pretty tough schedule. They've rattled off five straight since then. They're 6-2. They're playing great football. They just beat up on Tingsboro a couple weeks ago. I think it might be a little bit closer than that this time around, but they beat Tingsboro again.
Yeah, give me Clinton there. Next up is the 7-10 matchup. Cohasset back in the playoffs. Coach Afanasu always doing a great job there. They're going to be hosting the 10 seed West Bridgewater.
Yeah, it's a really good coaching matchup. Coach Kogler does a great job at West Bridgewater as well. I think it's going to be a pretty fun game. I think it's going to be competitive. Both of these teams can score a lot of points. Michael Wildfire leading Cohasset, Ty Holmes leading West Bridgewater. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I lean Cohasset by 7 to 10 points.
Yeah, I'm going to go Cohasset here as well. I mean, again, I think this is a program. You mentioned Wildfire, one of the more underrated signal callers in the state. He's had a great year. I think he proves to be the difference here. Their offense proves to be the difference, giving Cohasset. Next up, we have the 3-14 matchup and an intriguing first-round matchup here between two programs that have a lot of playoff experience and have been to Gillette. Mashpee is the 3 seed. They host St. Bernard's.
They played each other at
the
Gillette.
14 seed.
Yeah, they played each other at Gillette in 2015. Yeah. St. Bernard's is a good team. They've won 3 games. They just snuck into the playoffs, but they're battle tested. They played a difficult schedule for a Division 7 team. This Mashpee team's really clicking, though. I know they lost to Carver last week, but they've had some impressive wins. They beat Cohasset by 3 touchdowns. They beat the D8 favorite in Randolph. This is a really good team. Ben Squarsha, he's going to get the job done, I think. I like the Falcons by 14.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Falcons here as well. The one thing we know about Coach Bingham and St. Bernard's, they run that wing team. They run it well, and they can give defenses problems. But I just think this Mashpee team is too talented. This is one of Coach Trivieri's best teams in recent years. All right, finally, the 6-11 matchup in D7 features Amesbury against a place that I coached at once upon a time, Blue Hills Regional Voc Tech.
I'm going to need the full resume one day because I feel like a lot of these schools we come across, you have some sort of tie-in to.
It's a lengthy one, my friend.
even some semi-pro teams. So yeah, I'd like to get my hands on that resume.
I bounced around like a basketball for a while.
But Amesbury is a team. They're a runner-up from last year's Division 7 team, Division 7 Super Bowl. They lost to Uxbridge. They lost a lot. I think this is another team that kind of reloaded very nicely here. Amesbury's played well throughout the year. I think they get the job done here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Amesbury as well. All right, moving along here, we got D8 left, and then we'll get your picks in each division. Of course, we'll have our full preview up tomorrow as well, so you'll be able to match up this with that. You can get with this, or you can get with that. All right, next up, we have the 1-16 matchup. 1 seed in Division 8 is Randolph. They're going to be hosting. Oh, here we go. This is Kirchen and I always struggle with Quaboag Regional.
Quaboag, yeah. I think you nailed it that time, though. I'm pretty sure it is Quaboag. Randolph's like super impressive to me because they have the best back in Division 8 in Nathaniel Gomes. Lost him to an ankle injury in that Mashpee game. They still almost won that Mashpee game, and then they haven't lost since. And they're dominating teams, putting up a ton of points. Makai White, Haggai Joseph, Abe Cornett, that trio in the backfield has been nearly unstoppable. They keep it going in this one.
Yeah, I like Randolph as well. You mentioned that running game. I mean, it is one of the best running games in any division, really, across the board. Coach Marshall does a great job there with that offense. All right, next up, we have the 8-9 matchup, Narragansett Regional versus Old Colony RVT.
Old Colony has really been kind of an under-the-radar program here in Division 8 recently. They have a semifinal appearance under their belt recently. They've made some other runs. They make the playoffs seemingly every year. I think that experience matters in a game like this. I like the Cougars by a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Old Colony here as well. The 4-13 matchup features Neshoba Valley Tech versus Tech Boston.
Yeah, Danny Kelly's really got this team rolling here. The Vikings are playing good football. Freshman running back Zach DeShane has over 1,000 yards this year. Very impressive for a freshman. I think him and that offense keep it going. I like Neshoba Valley.
I like Neshoba Valley as well. The 2-15 matchup, our good friend Mike Ross back in the playoffs and in the hunt for another state title. West Boylston is looking to make it 3 state titles in a row. They're going to host the 15th seeded Hoosick Valley Hurricanes.
I think Hoosick Valley is pretty similar to Wacona. Like, they're a team that you expect to be in the playoffs every year. They've made runs to Gillette. They haven't been able to win it, but they've been at Gillette. They're always a factor in their division. Just really haven't been up to that lofty standard this year. West Boylston, they've run the double wing as good as anyone. I like the Lions.
Yeah, I'm going to go with West Boylston here as well. The 7-10 matchup sounds like a guy that you work with, Lee Bartlett. Lee takes on the 10 seed Bartlett.
Lee's kind of a team flying under the radar here in D8. They've dominated teams throughout the season. I think they keep it going. I think this is probably one of their more competitive, if not their most competitive game of the year. But I like Lee by a touchdown or two.
Yeah, it just sounds like a guy that works in a wood shop, Lee Bartlett.
Lee Bartlett.
I like Lee in this one as well. The 3-14 matchup features Carver, who is another strong contender in DA, back in position to get back to Gillette once again. They'll be hosting Lynn Volk Tech.
Yeah, Carver, again, this is another team. Like we've talked about Uxbridge, Amesbury, these teams that have just kind of reloaded. Carver sort of did that. They lost Coach Schufane as well, so that's different than these other teams. They didn't just lose a huge senior class. They lost their coach as well, and they've just kind of hit the ground running this year. They lost to Cohasset and Randolph late, but they're coming off a thrilling win, come from behind win over Mashpee. Jack Balzerini's transitioned to quarterback very nicely. I think the Crusaders keep it going here.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, our last game to look at is the 6-11 matchup. Kip Academy is the 6th seed. They'll be hosting Bourne.
Yeah, Bourne got off to a good start. They were kind of dominating opponents, started off 5-0. Then they hit the more difficult part of their schedule. They've lost 3 in a row to 3 pretty good teams. Fairhaven's a very good team. They can score. They're another team that runs a double wing. They run it pretty well. I think this is going to be a close one. Ultimately, though, Kip, I think they have too many skilled guys. They're going to get the job done here.
I'm with you here. I'm going to go with Kip as well. I think that it's going to be an interesting contrast in styles. Kip can play a little faster, spread you out, and throw the ball. I think they are the more athletic team, and I think that proves to be the difference. All right, real quick, let's before we wrap up here, and we're going to wrap up here. We'll try to get into some of the out-of-state matchups next week. But real quick, we're going to be putting this out tomorrow on anyfootballjournal.com in the morning, so you'll get our thoughts on all the matchups here. But real quick, give me your predictions for each division. Who do you like in each division in terms of winning it all?
Yeah, I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. I like West Boylston to repeat in Division 8. I don't know if that's an unpopular take at this point in time or not, but I like them to defeat Randolph in Division 8. In Division 7, I think we're going to see Uxbridge go back-to-back. I think that it's going to be an all-Central Mass matchup between Uxbridge and Clinton. D6 is a tough division. I saw a great semifinal matchup last year between Hudson and Fairhaven. I think they'll play each other at Gillette this time around, but I like Hudson. Again, I don't know if that should be considered an upset or not. Maybe to people outside of Eastern Massachusetts, that's not an upset. Hudson's a very good team. I think that'd be an excellent game. I like Hudson over Fairhaven. Division 5, I like Foxborough to repeat. I like them in a close one over Shawsheen. Division 4, I think for the third time in 4 years, we're going to get Duxbury Scituate. I like Scituate to win the rubber match in that one. Division 3, the ultimate toss-up division. Again, I've seen North Attleboro. I'm like most comfortable with North Attleboro in this division. It's a true toss-up division, though. I really was stuck. I think I like the way Bill Rick is playing recently, though. I lean North over Billerica. I think that'd be a fun game at Gillette, but I like North to win D3. D2, for the third time in 4 years, CMKP. I lean CM in that one. I think CM's the best team in the state. And then in Division 1, I like Springfield Central over St. John's Prep.
Yeah, should be fun. Should be fun. And, of course, we're going to have you covered the entire way. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, the D1 state title game this weekend in Vermont, CVU, Rutland. What do you like there? I mean, CVU's been rolling all year long. I don't see that changing.
I don't either. I mean, they played a closer game. It was still a 2-score game, but they played a closer game last week. So maybe that, maybe a blueprint was kind of laid out on how to slow them down, how to beat CVU. Ultimately, though, they're clearly the class of Vermont this year. I think they get it done.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And there's a couple of other playoff matchups as well to keep an eye on. Noble versus Bonnie Eagle up in Maine should be a terrific Class A matchup there as well. All right, Tyler, great job as always. I know we went a little rapid fire here. I know we went a little long, but we wanted to get through all the MIAA matchups. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the High School Preview Show. We'll be back with you again next week. For Tyler Emerald, I'm John Cernitas. Till then, peace.